Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the significance of the Republic Day chief guest. We also take a quick look at what the Supreme Court said about the farmer protests. But first, we bring you a story from Assam. This time last year, what had dominated news headlines across the country were the protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act, or CAA. The law grants easier citizenship for Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, Parsis, and Jains who come to India after facing religious persecution in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh before 2015. The law has been controversial largely because it excludes Muslims. But now, 12 months later, the act is still in a bit of a limbo, and there are questions about the extent to which it can actually help people who have faced persecution and have come to the country. Recently, Tora Agarwala, who reports on Assam for the Indian Express, had written about a 104-year-old man named Chandrahar Das, who passed away last week. And this man's story tells us a lot about the fate of the Citizenship Amendment Act. In this segment, Tora tells us the story of Chandrahar Das.
So I actually met Chandrahar Das's family in, I think it was May or June 2018. That is when I had gone to report on the Citizenship Amendment Bill. It was a bill then to Barak Valley in Assam, where a lot of Hindu Bengalis reside. So, while I know the bill and the act came into popular, consciousness only last year, I think around this time, in Assam, the story is much older because the first, the opposition to the bill and, the whole drama around the bill started as early as even before 2018, actually.
And that's when Tora had gone to Barak Valley to report about the bill, and where she met Das's family. Chandrahar Das had been one of the many people in Assam who had been declared a foreigner and put in a detention camp. He was 102 years old when he was put in one. Tora had met his wife, son, and daughter, and they had told her about his life and how he had fled from the persecution happening against Hindus in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh.
They just knew that, he had come in from, what was erstwhile East Pakistan into Tripura in maybe the 1950s or 60s because of all the, killings and etc. which is happening there. And he got to Assam and he lived here as he would sell muri laddus, which is like puff rice laddus, from house to house. That's how he got by. And suddenly in, I think, 2017, they suddenly started receiving orders and notices that, that he was a foreigner and that he had to appear in court and things like that. And I mean, they didn't know what it was about. And just one fine day in March 2018, the authorities came and picked him up and he was put in the detention center in Silchar.
Das had ended up spending 3 months in the detention center, which had been a lot for a man his age and health. Tora also remembers that Das's family was poor and ran a tiny little shop in the outskirts of Silchar.
And, they were obviously like many other people I've met during the course of, reporting on the NRC and whole citizenship debacle in Assam. They were also illiterate, poor, and they didn't know what the hell was going on. And the only thing they knew is that their father, who's very old and who was unwell, was in jail for a few months. And, but they had given all their papers in and it just wasn't working out.
Tora says that when he was put in the detention center, there was a lot of hue and cry about it. Considering a man his age, so old that he was bent double, was labeled a foreigner and put in jail. He had health issues while being locked up as well. He managed to get out after 3 months, but his case in the Foreigners Tribunal still continued.
So subsequently, his son and his daughter would appear for him. But he, lived in his home. And from what his children have told me, he would always say that everything will be all right because he was a very, very big Narendra Modi fan. Obviously, he was old and he had a little bit of dementia as well. So he didn't really understand, say, the technicalities and legalities of it. But he knew that there was this sort of bill or act subsequently that had come, this new law, and that this would help him. So he would keep telling his daughters, oh, he will save us. Modi ji is Bhagwan for me. he would then, say he see his poster and, bow down or pray to it. So he had this hope that, his case would be solved and Prime Minister Modi would help it to be solved. And before he died, he'd die an Indian and not a foreigner.
But unfortunately, that could not happen. He passed away Sunday night as a foreigner.
So that's one of the biggest regrets like his children have. That's what his daughter was telling me yesterday when I spoke to her over the phone, that, this is also like, wish that, something would happen and something would work out, but it didn't. And now he's gone.
Assam has been dealing with the issue of citizenship for some time now. Back in 1951, the first National Register of Citizens, or NRC, was prepared in the state. This was the list that was updated last year and was being used as a tool to identify illegal immigrants in the state who may have come in from Bangladesh. The idea was that only those who are on the list are to be considered Indian citizens. If you were on the list, that means you had proved that you were in fact an Indian citizen. And if you were not on the list, then your citizenship had come under question. But even apart from the NRC, there have been other ways to identify whether someone has been living illegally without papers in the state.
I think from 97 onwards, the Election Commission started weeding out D voters, which are doubtful voters. They would go through like draft electoral rolls and point out those people who they felt like, didn't have documents or, had faulty documents, and would mark a D against them. Then that meant doubtful voter. So once you had the D mark, it basically meant that your citizenship was in question. Then the other way was we have a wing called the Border Police Wing, and their job was to sort of identify those people who they felt had like dubious nationality. So they were also working and, going from across villages and, looking for people who they thought were living here illegally. So, there were these two processes also happening. So either you get picked up by the border police or you get this D mark. Once you get that, you start getting notices from these courts called foreigners tribunals, and you have to go and defend your citizenship in these foreigners tribunals.
And this is what happened with Chandrahar Das. Around 2016 and 17, Das had received several notices to appear before the foreigners tribunal.
They had 3 hearings. I remember his daughter telling me this when I visited them, that they had 3 hearings and they missed one because it was raining and they had no way to go. Another time, he was feeling really unwell and his back had really given away, so they couldn't go. And then after that, because they didn't appear, he was declared a foreigner on ex parte. Basically, that means that when the person doesn't appear in court. So he was given an ex parte judgment, and that's how he was declared a foreigner and subsequently picked up by the police in March 2018.
Chandrahar Das had a document from 1965 to prove that he had come to India by then. In Assam, to prove your citizenship, you have to prove that you were a citizen of the state prior to 25th March 1971. That's the cutoff date. And though Das's document tried to prove that, it was being rejected by the court. And that not only meant that his citizenship was in question, but that of his children's as well.
So that way, this is basically, his story is also like story of so many other people in Assam. Some people have documents, some people don't have documents. And, it's also like a fallacy to believe that in India, a lot of people, everyone will have documents because how bureaucratic processes over here work. So it is very possible that he came much before this so-called cutoff date. But the thing is, his documents are not being accepted right now.
Tora says that the notices and Das's eventual arrest really came out of the blue for the family, who, like mentioned earlier, were both poor and illiterate. There are a lot of people in Assam who have been picked up like Chandrahar Das was. They are put inside detention centers, which are actually inside district jails. And there, they're kept alongside hardened criminals, those convicted of crimes like murder and rape. At one point, Tora says, there were around 1,000 such people in detention centers across the state.
What has happened is in the last few months after, COVID and the pandemic, a lot of people have been allowed to come out of the detention centers. And also Supreme Court last year passed an order saying that those people who have finished 3 years detention and who can, furnish a bond, they can also come out, but the authorities will keep a check on them. So right now, the number of people in detention has reduced quite a bit. I don't know the exact number, but it's lesser than what it was before. And, there are a lot of people who have received these orders and, whose citizenship is still in question. Or giving you the example of Mr. Das, like he was declared a foreigner, but automatically his children's citizenship and his wife's citizenship are also in question, right? So that way, there are a lot of people like him. And Assam is also building a separate detention center, which is in Gwalpara district. And that is supposed to sort of house only these people who are declared foreigners right now. So they say it's like as bad as it sounds, but it's like a step up from, these district jails where living conditions are really bad. So a separate center is also coming up to house them as well.
Like mentioned in the beginning of the story, Chandrahar Das's family had lived in the Barak Valley. Tora explains that in that region, the dominant community is the Hindu Bengali community. Last year, there had been a lot of protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act in the state. But in the Barak Valley region, there was a lot of support for it.
Because a lot of people who came and lived in Barak Valley are people who crossed over after facing religious persecution. So they've always wanted this act.
Last year, when the NRC in the state was being updated, Tora says that a lot of Hindus in Assam had been left out of it. This had made the BJP anxious, and the party had called the updated NRC faulty.
This is where the anxiety comes from, because they have been sort of promoting themselves as the saviors of the Hindus. But here you see a lot of Hindu Bengalis are out of the NRC or, are in detention, or like the case of this man as well. So politically, the former Congress MP from Silchar, Sushmita Dev, like she visited the family. And when I spoke to her yesterday, she was of the opinion that, if the BJP had said that they're going to help the Hindu Bengali community, like why aren't they doing anything? And they've said that the Citizenship Act is supposed to help these people. So why has nothing happened?
When it comes to the CAA, Tora says there is a bit of a contradiction about it in Assam. The idea has been that if someone gets left out of the NRC in the state, meaning when they can't prove themselves to be an Indian citizen, then they can apply for citizenship through CAA, which of course only works if you're a Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Christian, Parsi or Jain, leaving out Muslims of course. So this idea could then technically work for the Hindus in the state, if they have been left out of the NRC. But the problem is, then they would be required to do a complete turnaround.
Because essentially you're saying you're Indian citizen when you apply to the NRC. Now, when the NRC kicked you out, you're suddenly, doing like a 360-degree turn and saying that, okay, I'm actually someone who was persecuted and that's why I came here. So there's this sort of contradiction in this act. And that is why many Hindu Bengalis who are aware and who know about this feel that, this Citizenship Act will not really help them, because it's more like a ploy by the BJP to sort of lure them. But the thing is, they don't have any other option. And the poorer, the more illiterate people, they have no option but to bank on the bill. And they may not understand these technicalities, but they hear the Prime Minister's speeches and they hear that, the Hindus won't be affected by it. So they sort of pin their hopes onto this bill. So same for this man and his family. They don't know whether the bill will actually help them or not. Even the rules are not even framed till now. But because they keep hearing and, they also support Modi and they believe in him. So automatically they think the bill will help them, when in reality, we don't know, it might actually not.
Tora had also spoken to the sitting BJP MP in Silchar about this and about Chandrahar Das's case.
He basically said that, he also hopes that the Citizenship Act will help them. And, things have gotten delayed because of the COVID pandemic. They haven't been able to frame the rules yet. So that's the answer he gave. But the fact of the matter is 1 year has passed. And obviously the act has polarized people a lot, as we have seen in, forget Assam, but, in Delhi or any other place or the rest of the country. But nothing has happened after it. Like, they haven't framed the rules, or we don't know how it's going to help people actually.
Dear listeners, before we move on to the rest of the show, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there is perhaps no other place that does that better than Indian Express's Explained section. We on Three Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of Indian Express, you know how useful the explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and access the coverage 24/7. Explained by Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show. And next, we talk about India's upcoming Republic Day. It has now been confirmed that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations in January next year. This was announced by British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab after his meeting with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Tuesday. In this segment, Shubhajit Roy, Indian Express's associate editor who reports on matters of foreign affairs for the paper, joins us to talk about the significance of the Republic Day chief guest and the factors that determine the pick. And he first points out that the Republic Day celebrations is possibly the highest point in terms of diplomatic calendar in India's due.
India has always chosen its Republic Day guest this in a symbolic from the government's perspective. Now, it is sort of woven strategy with hospitality to decide its chief guest. Every year, the choice is dictated by a number of factors: strategic, diplomatic, business interests, geopolitical goals. So the choice of the chief guest for India's Republic Day celebrations actually goes through a process of consultations within the government first, and it takes a good 2 to 3 months before finally the invitation is extended to a country and its leader. So this has been the norm in the last 70 years of India as a republic. And that's what has happened this year as well, with India inviting the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson as the chief guest for the 26th January Republic Day celebrations next year.
Shubhajit says that there is a history of leaders and representatives from the UK being the Republic Day chief guests. But this is after more than 26 years that a British Prime Minister will be in this position.
You know, the last British Prime Minister who came to India as the chief guest of the Republic Day celebrations was John Major in 1993. And before that, actually, there have been a couple of times when first Prince Philip came here in 1959, and then Queen Elizabeth, the current queen, actually, who you see beautifully portrayed in the Netflix series Crown, Queen Elizabeth II. She came here in 1961. And the British Chancellor of Exchequer, Rab Butler, had come in 1956. In fact, in 1956, there was another chief guest, which was Japanese Chief Justice Kotaro Tanaka. And then in 1964, Lord Mountbatten, who was earlier the Viceroy of India, and in 1964, he was the Chief of Defence Staff of the UK, essentially equivalent to our Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat. He had come to India in 1964 as the chief guest. So this is not the first time. This is the sixth time that a British leader or British representative has come to India as the Republic Day chief guest.
Shubhajit explains that although bound by historical ties, India and the UK share a modern partnership, one that has come through since 2004 when it was upgraded to a strategic partnership.
Strategic partnership, as we know by definition, means that when you talk defense, space, security, and trade with all these issues with a country, you declare it as a strategic partnership. And since 2004, the relationship has actually been built. There have been a lot of ups and downs in the recent past. And now this visit comes in the context of Britain leaving the EU. And it's a post-Brexit, post-COVID world that the two countries are looking at when they are engaging with each other. So this would possibly be the first sort of big visit for Prime Minister Boris Johnson to come to India after the Brexit transition takes place. And this is definitely his first big visit in the post-COVID world.
talking about Brexit specifically, Shubhajit points out that a lot is going to change between the two countries.
All agreements between India and EU, to which UK was already part of, will have to be renegotiated or have to be negotiated again. It means trading arrangements, civil aviation arrangements, all these issues. Now, UK is among India's major trading partners. In fact, UK ranked 15th in the list of India's top 25 trading partners a couple of years ago. Investment-wise, UK is the fourth largest investor in India after Mauritius, Singapore, and Japan. And it accounts for almost around 7% of all the foreign direct investment into India. So from that perspective, India-UK relationship will have to be redefined, rediscovered once it's no longer part of the EU.
This is why Boris Johnson being the chief guest holds significance. And it's not just areas of trade and investment. Shubhajit says that India and the UK also engage in areas like defense, counter-terrorism, and most importantly, people-to-people contact.
As you know, that Indian students, large number of Indian students go to the UK to study and work and live there. And that has been dented in the recent years with some tightening of visa measures by the UK. But the current Boris Johnson government is trying to revisit some of these areas and once again allow Indian students to work after their study. So UK plans for 25,000 UK students to go to India through a program. Also, UK has now sort of trying to promote more visas, more work visas, more skilled professionals to go to the UK. And Indian diaspora in the UK is one of the largest ethnic minority communities in the country. That's a big chunk, and they're very politically active. You remember Prime Minister Modi in 2015 in November, he had went to the Wembley Stadium, the famous Wembley Stadium, where all the big concerts and all the big football matches take place. And he had addressed a gathering of over 60,000 people. So that tells you about the Indian diaspora which exists in the UK. And to engage in all those levels, from defense to trade, investment, people-to-people contact, education, destination, on all those parameters, UK is extremely important for India and people of India. So that's why the Indian government is going to lay out the red carpet for the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
Shubhajit also says that since the pandemic is still going on, the Republic Day celebrations are expected to take place at a smaller scale, just like the Independence Day celebrations that happened on August 15.
But having said that, the honor of becoming the chief guest itself is a big deal from the Indian perspective. And that was part of the conversation when Prime Minister Modi recently spoke to Boris Johnson, or the British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab is in India right now. He met the Prime Minister on Wednesday, and he had met External Affairs Minister Jaishankar on Tuesday, and he's traveling to Bangalore as well as part of the preparations for Boris Johnson's visit. So in that sense, it will be a colorful celebration, and it in itself tells you the kind of importance explained in the episode before, that how it will be seen diplomatically that it is an outreach to the UK in the post-Brexit, post-COVID world.
And in the end, we talk about the farmer protests. Yesterday, noting that the centre's negotiations with farmers protesting against the agricultural reform laws have not yielded any results, the Supreme Court said that it could form a committee to work out a solution between the two sides. The court said that the proposed committee would comprise of representatives from the government and farmer unions across the country to resolve the deadlock over the farm laws. Hearing a batch of petitions seeking removal of farmers protesting near Delhi borders, a bench of Chief Justice of India S.A. Bobde Justices S.A. Bopanna and V. Subramanian issued a notice to the center and posted the matter for hearing on Thursday. The ongoing protest, which is now in its third week, has seen thousands of farmers, primarily from Punjab and Haryana, gathering at the capital's doorstep. So far, the government and farmer union leaders have held 5 rounds of talks without much headway. Meanwhile, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta told the bench that the government would not do anything against the interest of farmers. The plea in this case was filed by Rishabh Sharma, a law student who contended that because of the ongoing protests at the Delhi borders, the roads have been blocked by protesters and closed border points, which have affected vehicular traffic, and people who are traveling to and from Delhi to get medical treatment in reputed government and private hospitals situated in Delhi are also affected. You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and as always was edited and mixed by our producer Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explain section. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explain and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like this show, then you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.